Good morning. You know what day it is. You can tell allergies are in the air. It's hump day. Mike. So I start Wealth Mastery this morning. I'm doing another Tony event. And you know, what's the difference between rich people and poor people? Well, the first difference is psychology. You know, we all kind of have a thermostat of where we think we're supposed to be with regards to kind of everything in our life, if you think about it, with our health and our weight and our body, but also with regards to our finances. And you know, one of the things that happens is we always figure out a way to pay for our musts. We always figure out a way to pay, you know, for our rent or our house payment and heat and electricity and gas, you know, food. I mean, we figure out how to do the necessities. But having financial freedom, we don't make that a necessity. And so that's not where we are in our thermostat. And what happens to us is if it gets too cold, if all of a sudden we don't have enough money to meet our necessities and it's starting to get chilly and the thermostat is dropping, we'll pick it up in order to make that happen. I mean, you're going to find a way to make those musts happen. You're going to find a way to make sure that your kids get what they need. You're going to find a way to make sure that your lights are on. I mean, you're going to find a way to make sure that your water is on. You know, you're not going to let those things go. But the same is true if it gets too high. Because we have this expectation of where we're supposed to be, coffee's done. If all of a sudden it starts to get too hot, what'll happen is people will start to cool it down. They won't feel like they're supposed to be at that level. They won't feel like that's okay if they're there. They'll have guilt surrounded around it, which could come from beliefs, you know, they got as a kid, beliefs they got from their religion, or they just simply don't have an expectation that that's where they're supposed to be in life. And so all of a sudden they'll start to slow that down. If they're starting to get super successful at work and all of a sudden they're starting to have excess income, now they might, you know, not work as hard and relax too much and not keep up the same intensity, not have the same grit, start overspending. And then the next thing you know, you're back to where you were on that thermostat, where you think you're supposed to be. You know, if you think you're supposed to be a 70-degree person and all of a sudden you're operating at 90 degrees and you're having all this excess income, you're going to slow down and get yourself back to 70 degrees. So one of the first things that we need to do if you want to have financial freedom is you got to change your psychology. You got to make financial freedom a must. You got to look at it and say, I'm going to accomplish this result no matter what. You got to put it in that same category as those bills that you're never going to miss, as your rent, as your house payment, as your water, as your electricity, as your heat. You know, when that amount of money, when creating that amount of money becomes a must, now you're going to figure out how to do it. And when you get around the people that have financial freedom, they made financial freedom a must. They made it a priority, they made it a must, and then they figured out a plan on how to get there. Now, just like with everything else, the plan didn't always go as planned, and they had to adjust, and they had to change, and they had to do this, and they had to do that. But at the end of the day, the biggest difference is psychology. They decided that they were going to have financial independence. That's the biggest difference. You know, Warren Buffett said the difference between somebody who's worth 100 or a couple of $100 million and $1 billion is luck. That they did something that got lucky and so that got them to the $1 billion. But that even if they weren't going to be at the $1 billion, they would be at the 100 or 200 or 300 million because they set out to make sure that they had that financial independence. And when you get around people that have done that, the majority, now some of them hit the winning ticket, right? Some of them get some sort of, you know, they miraculously invested in Bitcoin, usually unintentionally, and then it skyrocketed. And some of them got into some company or got into some business early on that went bananas, but those, quite frankly, are few and far between. The majority of people that have financial independence and financial freedom, they did it as a steady player, and they did it intentionally, and they did it over time. They used compounding interest. They had a plan as to how they were going to create it, and they spent less than they made and they created it. That's the majority of significantly wealthy people. And they all do the same process in order to get there. They might not use the same vehicle, but they do the same process. The thing with, the lottery ticket, the thing with all is, like with Bitcoin, it's so hard to actually put your money in and make a big enough bet. I mean, most reasonable people aren't going to do that. I had somebody who knows what they're talking about, very significantly knows what they're talking about, telling me to buy Bitcoin when it was at $1,800 a Bitcoin. Okay, well, I bought a couple of Bitcoin. I mean, I did take their advice and buy some, but I didn't take all my money and put it into it. Now, had I, I'd be buying an island, right? But, to sit there and take all your money and say, I'm going to put it in on this long shot. I mean, most people don't have the guts to do that. And quite frankly, it's not the smart move to do that, because, you can do that several times and never have it work out. So it's unlikely that you're going to end up being the person that buys the perfect thing and then all of a sudden it's worth $30 million. It does happen, but more often than not, the people that create financial independence and financial freedom, they do it over time. They do it with a consistent approach and they do it over time. And quite frankly, if you look at the process of doing that, it's pretty simple. Compounding interest is a miraculous thing, and then that's what they use. And what you really want to do is create cash flow so that you don't have to come up with your own money. And we can talk about that as the week goes on. I'll talk about all of this stuff as the week goes on. But the first thing that you got to think about is psychology. You got to create a psychology that I'm going to make financial independence, financial freedom a must. When you do that, you're going to change your approach. And then when you change your approach, you're going to change your outcome. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.